Let's talk about something that trips up almost every single trader. I'm talking about the endless, maddening hunt for the perfect entry pattern. We're going to call it the entry pattern paradox. You know the question, right? It's the one we've all typed into search engines at 2 a.m. We spend so much time looking for that one magic bullet signal, that one pattern that's going to solve everything. But what if I told you we're asking the completely wrong question from the very start? I know. That sounds completely backward, doesn't it? It probably goes against everything you've learned. But just hang with me here, because this one idea, it's the key to this entire explainer. The patterns you're obsessed with, by themselves, they are totally meaningless. Let's dig into why. Okay, here it is. This is the big mind shift you have to make. Your real job as a trader isn't to be a pattern hunter. It's to understand the market's story. You have to figure out where price is coming from, that's point A, and where it's most likely trying to go, that's point B. The entry pattern, that's just the very last piece. It's how you get on board the move, not the reason the move exists. So with that big idea locked in, let's start building our toolkit. We're going to walk through 3 really common bearish patterns you can look for after you've already figured out the market wants to go down from A to B. First up is the bearish breaker block. Now, this is a big one. Our source material calls this one of the strongest algorithmic signatures you can find. Think of it like a footprint, a clue left behind by the big trading algorithms when the market shifts from bullish to bearish. Okay, let's break this down. It's a simple sequence. First, the market makes a high. Then, and this is the key part, it pushes up one more time to make a higher high. Got it? After it fakes everyone out with that new high, the price just collapses. It smashes right through the low that was sitting between those two peaks. Your entry opportunity comes when price tries to crawl back up to that level it just broke. That's your spot. All right, next up we have the bearish mitigation block. Now, pay close attention because this looks almost exactly like the breaker block, but there's one tiny but super important difference. And here it is. This is the only thing that separates them. With a breaker block, price makes that higher high before it tanks. But with a mitigation block, it fails to make a new high. It just makes a lower high. That's it. That is literally the only difference. And it's really important to know one isn't better or stronger than the other. They have the exact same significance. Okay, our last tool for the bearish toolkit is the fair value gap, or as you'll often see it, FVG. This one's a simple 3-candle pattern, and it basically shows you a little pocket of, let's call it imbalance in the market, where price just moved way too fast. So here's how it works. You get a big, aggressive move down. Look at those 3 candles. See that little space between the bottom of the first candle and the top of the third one? That's the fair value gap. It tells us that price moved so fast, so aggressively, that there was no real two-sided trade happening in there. The market hates these little vacuums, and it often acts like a magnet, pulling price back up into that gap to rebalance things. And that retracement, well, that's your potential entry. All right, we've covered the bearish side. And you know what the best part is? If you understood all of that, you already know the bullish patterns. Why? Because they are just the exact opposite. A perfect mirror image of what we just learned. Seriously, just flip everything upside down. Remember how the bearish breaker needed a higher high? Well, the bullish one needs a lower low. The bearish mitigation block had a lower high. The bullish one has a higher low. And that fair value gap, instead of being a gap below price, it's a gap above price. It is that simple. Perfect inversion. Okay, now for what I think is the most important part of this whole thing. These patterns we just learned, they're just ingredients. The real magic happens when you know how to combine them, when you see how they fit together inside that bigger A to B story. This is what our source calls stacking probabilities. Think about it like this. You're looking at a chart and you spot a bearish breaker block. Okay, that's one clue. That's a point of interest. But then you zoom in and you see that inside that breaker zone, there's also a fair value gap. Whoa, now you have 2 completely separate signals pointing to the very same area. That's a high probability setup. But, and I can't say this enough, none of that matters one bit if you got the overall direction, your A to B analysis wrong in the first place. Let me give you a really simple analogy to make this stick. Think of the market's big move from point A to point B as a long highway. You've done your homework, you know the destination is south. These entry patterns, the breaker, the FEG, all of them, they're just different on-ramps you can take to get onto that highway. The on-ramp is not the journey itself, it's just your way of getting in the car and starting to drive. And that brings us right back around to where we started. If the pattern is just the on-ramp, then what is our real job as a trader? What should we be spending all our time on? I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? Your number one job, the skill that matters more than anything else, is being able to read the market story and figure out that A to B path. The entry pattern is the easy part. It's just a mechanical step you take after all the real brain work is done. So here's your new game plan. First, stop the obsessive pattern hunting and start focusing on reading the market's overall narrative. That's job one. Second, just pick one or two of these entry models that make sense to you, that click with your brain, and really master them. And finally, never, ever forget that context is king, always. So I'll just leave you with this one last question to think about. Are you going to keep being a pattern hunter, always looking for the next shiny signal? Or are you ready to become a narrative reader? Someone who truly understands what the market is trying to do. Because making that shift, well, it could change everything.